Right. Good evening and welcome everyone, and welcome to the Wedmore Parish Council meeting on Wednesday the 20th of March 2019. May members be reminded that we are recording this meeting. Any apologies for absence?
Yes, apologies from Louise, Steve Moore, Steve George and Julie Kennedy.
Any reports from County and District? No David tonight, so Polly?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So I wasn't at the last meeting here, so yeah, there's been quite a lot going on. We had a community scrutiny meeting where we were discussing the single-use plastic strategy and the customer access strategy. It was quite interesting that they were telling us that 90% of curbside recycling stays in the UK and was reused. 99% of plastic bottles were reused in the UK. A company called Sharp Pack, who are based in Bridgewater, make this plastic trays for the supermarkets, the big supermarkets. They came to talk to us about how they're trying to make their trays completely recyclable. They were telling us that 1.5 million plastic bottles per day go into making their trays, and 80% of their 1.5 million.
How many trays does that make?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
Trays that make, sorry, I haven't got that bit. 80% of their plastic trays are made up of recyclable material. So that was really quite interesting, what they're trying to do there. Went up to see the pavilion, which is fabulous. That's going to be such a good space. Fantastic sports centre for our community and the surrounding area. We had a licensing panel meeting to determine the suitability of a driver to hold a Hackney carriage licence. He had previous convictions from 10 years ago and more recently, so we would consider revoking his licence. But he was the mechanic for the taxi firm, but he has to have a taxi licence to get the taxis to and from Collie Lane where they inspect them. So we suspended it for 2 weeks to just give the taxi drivers a bit of a signal from us that we won't be tolerated naughty behaviour. We've had a grants committee meeting. In the pot was just under £25,500, and the request for just nearly £25,000. So there's a little bit left over. We refused only one, as they'd been back twice already. And we were looking at changing the criteria of the grants amounts and applications. Been on to highways a lot about Wellsway, which was closed for 2 weeks. I have to say I'm not impressed with what they've done.
No.
I know they were patching it, but it's really rubbish, and I've been on and on at them about putting some signage up for cyclists to wear and pedestrians for the kids, walking and cycling to school, and other people. So I will be in touch with them because I think they've done a really poor job. What else? We had the Somerset Drainage Board Consortium AGM meeting. And that was about North Somerset Levels Independent Drainage Board joining the consortium on the 1st of April. We discussed the consortium agreements and policy documents, and then we had a full council meeting down at Bridgewater today.
Polly.
That's that.
Thank you.
Just a quick one. I'm not surprised that most of the waste recycling stays in the UK, because I've had to 3 times in the last 10 days beep at Somerset Sedgemoor Waste Partnership and get them to pick up the bits they just leave on the floor. It's disgusting. The litter is horrendous from recycling day. I'm thinking it doesn't really benefit much. They just chuck it out and then there's like 5 or 6 bits left. They fling it around the road.
Well, you must report that if you see that, and then
because I beeped at them and was like that,
yeah.
and then.
Well, you need to report that. If anybody sees that, if you report it, they'll find out who the crew were on the day, and they'll be sent back to pick anything they've dropped back.
Yeah.
Because I do hear reports of that, but they will sort it out if you report it.
Yeah. It's one of those things, isn't it?
Just regarding Wellsway,
Yes.
do you want to get a meeting there?
With who? The highways people?
Yeah.
Could do. Well, good luck, we'll try.
Well, there's still loads of markings that they've
They've got to
put
come
down
back. I mean,
to do
they're
it.
definitely
And they have-
working
they-
for 2 weeks on it. They were absent most of the time, I
It's
think.
only been, what,
I
a
know
third,
it's-
third of the job's been done,
I know.
and there's no additional drainage at the top
Yeah.
of the crossroads.
I will get back in touch with them because I was also trying to get the chevrons up at Maltfield still,
Yeah.
nearly 2 years on. So
Yeah.
I'm on to them, but yeah, that'd be good. I will try and do that.
Just
Can I
walk-
come in
walk
on
around.
that? Steve actually has spoken to the woman from the Somerset County Council, and he's mentioned the chevrons on the Baskerville Road, and he's pointed out where they should go.
Okay.
He's also, if I may say so at the time, he's also taken her to show the little island and where we need those signs about the cyclists.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Has
Thanks,
he
Paul.
taken her? Sorry, has he taken her all the way up to Wellsbow so that they go all the way to school as well, not just up by Little Island?
No, that I can't say.
Okay. I'm
I
on Wellsbow, so
Okay, thank you, Paul.
that's all right.
To record any declarations of interest.
None I'm aware of, Chairman.
Item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of February
Have been
2019.
circulated.
Yeah.
All approved.
Yeah.
Bob, we're doing public participation. Do you want to speak?
So, excuse me, Chairman, I think Bob wants to speak on the neighbourhood watch,
Right.
neighbourhood plans agenda. It's on the agenda.
Okay, you want-
I talk about neighbourhood watch as well.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, moving on to public participation then. No one else. Right, okay, thank you. Any matters arising?
Not aware.
What about the disabled access?
Yeah, what's on the agenda?
Well, that's under the matters of
Yes,
items.
yeah,
There's nothing
I didn't know if there was
to-
anything else apart from the 2 items on the agenda.
Yes, there is. There's Coombe Lane, we were discussing last month, and I want to know what's happened there, and also the church wall at Blackford, what's happening there. It was on in the meeting, in the minutes.
Well, we'll do the disabled access first.
Yeah.
Disabled access, I spoke with Pete Brown
Yeah.
this morning. He said that the Sedgemoor homes up the road here, who are responsible for parking places, are putting in a planning application, and he's going to put a planning application at the same time on behalf of the Parish Council for our disabled access, and he wants to run in tandem. And the chap who is doing it is been on holiday, but he's hoping that it'll be submitted next week, in which case ours will be submitted next week.
So the Sedgemoor plan will be linked to our plan,
To
so
our
they'll
plan.
be looked at the same time,
Yeah,
so
I
those
mean,
are
it
combined.
was mentioned about 3 months ago, wasn't it, the same
Yes.
sort of thing, so let's hope something happens
Yeah.
this month.
We are pushing for it, Suzanne.
Yeah,
We want
well,
it.
we all need to be pushing for it, that's absolutely
Well,
right.
you know, we sat here time and time again, and David said how understaffed the council is. The guy's been off, and he's put it as a priority to see it. So we are in their hands, aren't we? You know, we've done as much as we
Unless
can.
we keep it in our minds and
Well, we
keep
are.
talking
I
about
can
it,
show you all
nothing
the
gets
I can show
done.
you all the emails if you like.
Well, that's absolutely fine.
Pete
You
Brown
obviously
is
know
very
more
much on
about
the
it than we
case.
do.
Pete Brown's very much on the case with it.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the other thing?
And
Coombe Lane.
Coombe Lane.
Jesus. Well, she's not here tonight, so
Judith will speak on it. She was awaiting a quote from Dave Tucker,
Yeah.
and
she's on holiday this week, so.
Well, so would you like me to ask her what happened?
Well, when she comes back off holiday, yeah.
Yes, I'll
I think we agreed, the council agreed to fund the improvements down there, so I don't think there's an issue really.
Well, it's just a question of getting something done. Otherwise, it just goes on.
we
and
can't
on.
just. It's not an open checkbook, though, is it? We've got to have a cost come in.
Yes, but we absolutely have.
Well, that's what we're
But
waiting for.
we need to get it in and not keep waiting month after month for something to come in.
It was only discussed at last month's meeting.
Exactly. Well, another month has gone by, and
It's
we
not
don't
my
have
fault she's
another
on
month.
holiday.
Well, I've said my say. that's fine.
She's looking after that project. She's got a vested interest in it, and that's how it will stand.
That's absolutely fine, as long as I know what's happening. And we all know what's happening.
Right.
And the church wall at Blackford, what's happening there?
That's an insurance job, told by the vicar, I spoke to the vicar last week, it's an insurance job, and nothing's going to happen until there's someone who's going to pay for it.
Can I ask what the issue is?
A car ran into the
The
wall.
lorry,
The-
no,
the
the
tractor.
tractor trailer went over
Yeah.
and knocked them.
The ongoing issue with the railings.
You mean the graveyard?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said the village
No,
wall.
the church,
No, the
church
church,
wall.
church
Church wall. Church wall at that.
Wall, sorry.
The boundary, yeah.
I turned my hearing there. I thought you said, only there is an issue
Pink
with
spot to
the,
zone me out.
there is an issue with the village hall, which is,
No, it's not.
nothing to do with
No,
that.
no, no.
Nothing to do with that.
Okay.
Fine.
Any other questions, Suzanne?
No, nothing.
Great. Right.
So training, perhaps we can put this off a bit, Chairman, until Dennis Brill.
He's here.
Oh, he's here. Yes.
Okay.
It was just to update members on Dennis's training.
That'll be later in the
Well,
later in the agenda.
Should I sort of, we deal with this a bit later on?
Yeah, so you carry on.
Okay. Item 7, financial matters.
All the accounts have been certified, Chairman, they all put to the penny, and all the accounts have been paid.
Thank you. Right. Item 8. To receive a presentation from Mike Gilder, reordering of St Mary's Church. Good evening, Mike.
Good evening, thank you. I suggested a little while ago to Rod that when the church had got the outcome of the questionnaire that we circulated around the village, it might be good if the Parish Council were the first to know what the outcome of that was and what we propose doing about it. Because Rod said a short presentation, I've not brought a PowerPoint, but I think you're all intelligent enough to note the content without a PowerPoint. I'm also going to comment to you slightly about the display we're going to be putting in permanently in the Guild Chapel. That's a little chapel as you enter the church by the small side door, with your permission. First of all, on the questionnaire, we circulated 930 questionnaires to every house in the parish. Normally on such questionnaires in my business life, if I got 2% response, I was considering myself very lucky. On this occasion, it's still, by numbers terms, quite low, but we got a response of 10%, so we got 94 responses, plus a number from organisations within the parish, such as the Arts Festival people and Somerset Singers that was. And so we have got a fair feedback on what happened. The issues we're putting to them really is we are mainly looking at the heating in the church because it's failing, it's costly, and it comes from another century. So, but whilst looking at the heating, we thought we'd better look at all the other aspects of what might make the church more community friendly than it currently is. Of the responses received, we got 94% of the people who responded were in favour of upgrading the heating, which wasn't a real surprise. Lighting came a close second with 86% in favour of improving the lights. But a lot of people may not be aware that recently, having had the remarkable experience of bringing a cherry picker into church and going up the aisles in a cherry picker, we've replaced all the bulbs in the existing lights on the basis that the bulbs, replacing those bulbs, brought a lot more light in because the other bulbs had been in there 17 years and had degenerated. And the fact that if we replaced them with LED lights, in fact the LED lights were less effective than the halide lamps that we've already got there, and therefore there didn't appear a lot of point in paying a lot of money for brand new fittings when we could get equal benefit from just replacing the bulbs. So that has, we've noticed in church, that has made an improvement. Any of you go in there, you'll see that there are one or two lights which have defeated our electrician, defeated me completely. They decide when they're going to come on and when they're not going to come on. And it's quite spasmodic. But I'm not taking a cherry picker in there again unless there's an absolute disaster. So the lighting and heating, those are the two elements. Now what I'm doing about the heating is I've got two commercial firms coming in the beginning of April to give their recommendations and costings for the most appropriate systems. I'm going to them and saying, look, we're also considering removing the pews from within the church. Now, I was expecting a very negative response to removing the pews, but the interesting fact was that 59% of the people who responded were in favour of removing the pews. If you then extended that, if you said we're just going to remove the pews from the centre portion of the nave, then that rose to 79%. So that's a very high proportion of people in favour of removing the seats in the centre. So I'm saying to the electrician, well, let's have your view of the best form of heating for the church, with the pews remaining as they are, or removing the pews from the centre and putting some other form of heating in. So I'm waiting for them to respond, because the heating really does underpin everything else we do. So that is the action in terms of the electrics for the time being. So by the end of April, I should have their responses in, and I'm then going to get a consultant in to come in and see what they say, because that will give me a balance between what the two commercial firms have said, and also that will validate, I hope, the costings that the commercial firms have provided, because they're going to do a thorough inspection of the church. That will cost us about £1,000, but I think it'll be money well spent to know we're doing the right thing. The removal of the pews, however, brings some very other interesting factors into play. Our architect, John Beecham, who sits on the diocesan committee, tells me that if you take the pews away, which they would be in favour of, you've got to replace them with wooden stackable chairs. The wooden stackable chairs stack 40 high, so that when you stack them away, they don't take up too much space and they don't look too ugly. The downside on that is, if you take all the pews out, all 330 pews, then they provide 6 persons, or 6 bums on seats, putting it bluntly, on each pew. In their place you can only put 5 seats. So the capacity of the church as a whole would drop by 50. And that may be of interest to people who are running charity events, and because it will affect their income, £400 or £500 less income for each performance. So that is not as straightforward. Also, the chairs that they, I'm told the DAC insist on, cost £180 plus VAT each.
I steal the pews.
So I recommend you all go into the chair manufacturing business, because I can get very similar chairs that don't stack, admittedly, only about that high, from IKEA for £34.50. So somebody somewhere is making a lot of money. So we need to look at that very carefully if we decide to go down that route. We've also got to consider, if we take all the chairs out, how often we're actually going to use that big open space that's provided. Bearing in mind, in addition to the village hall, we've now got the sports hall and the facilities above there. So we don't want to get into competition with them. So this is all that has got to be considered in the round. I will be consulted particularly with, you're delighted to hear, Suzanne, with the Arts Festival group, because they gave some very useful feedback, and see where we go with that. So removal of pews is an issue. The other major items that people commented on were that they wanted improved catering in the church. Once again, most of them said put the catering facilities on the always get it on the west side of the church, because that's the most obvious place. Problem with that is, put a big catering area in like they've got in St Cuthbert's in Wells, and you take out more seats.
That's right.
So it's really got to be considered very much in the round this. I don't intend rushing at it. The costs of it, of course, we won't know until we've got a lot more investigation. But the thoughts of spending 300 or even 200 times £180 on a plus VAT on chairs, £40,000 to £50,000 does not appeal greatly to me, but it's not my decision. I'm just looking after it. The other thing that was very popular, 100% wanted projection facilities, which was interesting. 100% of people. And so we're going to look at that as one of the perhaps early benefits, because it's relatively easy to do. even though the last quotation I had to do that work was about 5 years ago was £24,000. I just don't believe that. That seems absolutely ludicrous for a projector and screen. So that's got to look at. So that's basically where I am at present. Nobody wanted to move the organ, nobody wanted to move the choir stalls.
No.
So it's really all about the nave and the heating of the nave and the catering facilities. This will all be published in, not all the problems, but all the issues, but that's going to be published in the Isle of Wedmore News, the outcome. If I can take just a minute or so more of your time, I'll just cover the Guild Chapel, little room as you go into the church by the side door. In there on the right hand side, there's a whole bank of bookshelves that haven't been used, to my knowledge, for 15 years. They're just lying there empty. What I'm proposing to put in there, and have got agreement from the PCC, is to put in those slots, each of them have purpose-made displays of the history of the village and the church in Wedmore, which I think is something that visitors don't have at present. And I think it would be, I've suggested it would be a jolly good idea if we did have something that actually welcomed them into the church and said, this is what we've got to offer. I'll also be getting a theme designed. I've taken the liberty of using what's become the traditional, because I got it from Rod, the traditional little sign motif for Wedmore, and wrapped around it St Mary's serving the community to give us a logo. And we'll take that right the way through the church in any notice we have, so that everything all fits together, lighting up the St Christopher so people can actually see it rather than wondering what the black blob on the wall is. And the history will comprise, I have just to remind myself, storyboards and a couple of banners covering the church building and how that's developed, how the village has developed from the time of King Alfred on to the present day. Another one describing a day in the life of the village in 1350, one covering the St Christopher painting, one covering the manor house and the Hodge family, Doctors Westover, because we've got the tombstone there, the Bracey family and the war graves particularly, and I'm putting more emphasis on those who died in the two wars, because the Braceys were a wealthy family and tend to get all the publicity with respect to them. Therefore I think the suffering of the wider community is important. And another under the stained glass window to the west end of the church, just explain to people what all the various panels are, because people don't realise it's the kings and queens, it's Alfred and Guthrum, and what little bits underneath portray. So it's all about just raising the history and the profile of the church and the community in the village. Now I hope that idea does appeal to you. We certainly think it has merit. What I'm doing to start with is low cost. It'll cost us about £1,500, for which we have the funds already, so I'm not coming to you for any money. It's just mainly, this has just been a question of informing you, because I feel the Parish Council, St Mary's is sort of an icon in the village. I think it's important the Parish Council should be the first to know about what we're thinking about doing. I'm happy to take any questions if you have time, Rod, otherwise I shall run out of the door.
Can I say I'm pleased nobody wanted the choir stalls or the organ room, because I think that keeps the church as a church.
Yeah.
I did threaten them with you.
I didn't answer the query because that was the only thing I was really against. I mean, no bones about it.
No, but it is a question. If you're going to ask people about the church, you've got to ask them about everything. I asked them about the candelabra. Some people wanted the candelabra raised. And I asked them if they'd like a ladder to get up there and light the
Yes,
candles.
exactly.
I mean, it's quite staggering what people do come back with.
It's only when the brownies hit them on Remembrance Sunday.
Yes.
Timescale for these potential works.
It depends. Sorry, I cannot answer you that.
More so that it's not going to happen before July the 20th.
No, it won't. No.
Specific to that.
A lot depends on what the heating decision, the Pew decision is. If it's just the heating, it's probably in the fairly near future, because we've got a certain amount of funds available thanks to a lady in the village. Sorry, I'll take your question in a
I
minute.
just want pews for my wedding, basically.
But well, I will make the point to you on the pews. We could make those pews a lot more comfortable by putting cushions on all the pews.
Yeah.
Cost of that, £8,000. So if you look at the balance between the two, you start to you start to wonder what is the best way forward. Yeah, if it's a bigger project than that, then of course we'll be into raising funds, and that's why I say I couldn't give you a full answer to that question.
That's right.
Just to mention, are you thinking of energy saving on the heatings? What?
Right, I've been working with the Green Group over the last
good.
6 months to a year. Because we were looking about putting a bank of solar panels on the roof of the church, which was pretty obvious. Told categorically that that was not a possibility because of the visuality of the south side to the village up above. On the north side, there's not enough light. The Green Group have looked at it extensively. We've had 2 firms in, and both concluded no possibility. What I am looking at, or asking the people coming in to look at, is the possibility of ground source or air source heating. And I will mention that when you come to do works like this, it's a question where you drill down, because all around the church there are bodies and people get very excited. But there is a big pit by the corner of the south-west corner of the church. If any of you ever want Wedmore Midsummer Murders, there is a manhole cover that drops down into a huge, a large room down there, which is about 12 feet deep. You've only got to drop your partner into that hole; they will never get out. But it could be a route for going straight down and drilling down there to bring the heat source. The other one, of course, the cheaper one to install, is air source heating. These can only be used really for underfloor heating. And I have reservations about, well, not me, John Beach has reservations about underfloor heating, because as soon as we take the wooden flooring up and want to dig down, you could be into ancient tombstones, you could be into bones, and a church that did that locally ended up by having 2 years delay and £100,000 extra cost. Therefore, it is a high risk, potentially, alternative. I hope you gather from this, I'm trying to think of it all in all respect, and I hope you found it useful.
Great, thank you, Mike. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Item 9.
Ben Stevens.
Receive a short presentation and update from Ben Stevens from GigaClick. Ben, good evening.
Evening. Yes, so as you will have probably noticed by getting stuck in some of our roadworks, we've been digging up the roads to install fibre broadband to large bits of Wedmore Parish. So I've brought along some maps that show our network coverage. So you'll notice it's not covering Wedmore itself, Wedmore Village itself. This is because Wedmore Village was deemed by the government to have good enough internet already. I will make no comment. So what we're doing is we've got 4 builds that encroach on your parish. There's in red Weir build. The name of the builds. Oh, thank you. The names of each build is just named after where the cabinet is placed, where the internet connection is. So it's not a slight on Wedmore that it's not named after you guys. So we've got Weir up there. There's the Crickham build that heads off this way. There's Field down here and Westham over there. So that's where we're planning on building. At the moment, Weir and Crickham are the 2 builds that are happening at the moment. Those are the 2 that are happening. We think they'll probably be finished by the 3rd quarter of this year. So we're on track at the moment to deliver that, which is really good. Because there are a couple of other builds where complexity has meant that it's been delayed. But luckily these 2 are well on track, so that's really good. Yeah, I think maybe I'll move on to my next map, which hopefully this is just of the Crickham build, which is the one that mainly goes into Wedmore Parish. So that's Wedmore Village down there, and this just gives you a bit more of an idea of the scale of it. So it comes all the way up onto the Mendip Hills, through Westbury, Rodney, and up towards Cheddar. So it's quite an extensive network. Total across the whole of Devon and Somerset, we're investing about as much money as it would cost to get 250,000 of those wooden stackable chairs. So that's so that gives you some idea. So that's what's happening at the moment. This map I can send these to your clerk so that you can look at them a bit more at your leisure. But the red blobs indicate a road closure. The blue blobs indicate traffic lights. And then the green, I don't think there's any green. No, but the green would be multi-way traffic lights. The blue is just two-way traffic lights. So as much as is possible, we try and build without having to close the roads. Obviously, in some places that's impossible. And as much as possible as well, we like to build an agricultural land, partly because it's faster, partly because it's cheaper, but also because it disrupts the community less. If we can just run the cable down through a field, that's infinitely better than closing your roads. So there are some road closures in the area at the moment. There are some road closures upcoming. Those will of course all be published through the usual channels. Hopefully by the third quarter of this year, all the areas up through Crickham and round up there should have super fast, ultra fast broadband, which should deliver 1 gigabyte up and down per second, which is easily the best internet you could get at the moment in the UK. And we think this will be 50 years worth of infrastructure development. At least that's what the government's also banking on. So we shouldn't need to come back and dig it all up again for 50 years. And once it's in the ground, it's a plastic tubing which we blow fiberglass through. So once that's all done, actually both those materials are really hard wearing, so they don't need the repairs in quite the same way that some of the other infrastructure might need. So that's a really quick whistle-stop tour through, because I'm aware you've got a long meeting, and I'll take any questions you have.
Thanks.
Okay, Nick?
Wednesday.
Where's that?
Not when, not where. I know where it is.
Yeah,
It's in the hinterland.
At the moment, we can't tell you. We can't give a full rollout plan because there have been some fairly well publicised delays in our project. At the moment, Connecting Devon and Somerset, the body that's set up to hold the money, we're working with them to develop a new rollout schedule. So as soon as that's done, we can then tell you exactly when that will be happening. But at the moment, they're still wanting to make sure they're completely comfortable with our methodology, so that they can be confident that the dates we give you are going to be met this time.
So not never.
Not never, but not next year either.
Right. Thank you.
Is this the same as True Speed? Is this the same thing?
No, it isn't.
Similar but different.
Similar but
No, that's fair enough. I mean, we got.
One goes
Yeah.
underground, one goes on the power lines.
That's a good summary.
Yes.
So we are. But we're the ones. We've got the government subsidy to deliver to all the rural areas. So I was saying to one of your colleagues earlier, I found a really good example actually. So up at Parish Council, for example, we'll have to deliver that because that's one of the blobs on our map. We'll have to deliver that, even if there's only one person up
Yes,
there.
of all the things.
We've got to run the fibre up there. So that's whereas True Speed would only deliver what's commercially viable because they're a commercial business, whereas we receive subsidy to deliver absolutely everything. The other main difference as well is we're setting up an open network, so any internet service provider can use our infrastructure. A bit like when BT installed phone lines, anyone can use the phone lines. So anyone will be able to use our infrastructure, whereas True Speed only deliver True Speed services over theirs. So those are the two key differences, really.
No, it's just my question for that is that they've been up through just that little hamlet of West Stoughton, which is above the village of Blackburn.
Yes.
And it's an absolute nightmare. It's we can all put up with them with the traffic one-ways and diversions, but what they leave behind, I mean, it's just unbelievable. Because the edges of the road down through Stoughton.
Yes, it's awful.
It's
Pete.
awful.
Yeah.
It really is. It's and our county councillor gave us to believe that they can't do really anything about that because they have to allow that to go down in the roads. Well, that's all very well, but I mean, nobody, the council's sort of bankrupt, as it were. There's no, you know, what happens to little hamlets and that?
Yeah, well, I did raise that question with David a few months ago with regard to an inspection process of keeping an eye on you guys, how you reinstate all the roads. Because there are inherent problems following cable or utilities going through and not being reinstated correctly. So, and you know, a harsh winter would tell that really. But
So we have there's a 2-year period, and the same would be true for True Street. There's a 2-year period where if the road breaks up, then the company has to return and install it at their cost. Now that does rely on the council sending out an inspector and seeing that the road's broken up. But if you report it to the council, then the council should be sending out inspectors. And that's.
Is that the due process then? For it, so say we noted it, and then inform county highways, and then there's an avenue that there's a route to
that's
come
the best
back
way of
to
doing
you.
it. And to be fair, if it's one of ours, or if you have any problems with the build, I do have some business cards, and I'm a good first point of contact as well.
Okay.
So yeah, if anyone.
We weren't answered that. I specifically asked that question a couple of months ago, and you know, we're still waiting for.
Yeah. Okay.
That's great.
No problem. I'll
Do you leave a part?
yeah, a couple of those. And then as I say, if there's any issues, let me know, and I might pass you on to someone else in the business, but at least then you've got a single point of contact.
Yeah, no, sure. Yeah. Thank you.
So unless there are any more questions, I'll leave you to the meeting.
Anyone else?
Great, welcome.
Thank you very much.
That's great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, moving on to item 10, to consider proposals for the speed indicator devices and update regarding the training. There was Steve, but Dennis is here, so
It's highly trained.
you're not wearing a high vis though, so that's we failed. Good evening.
I tell you what,
Good evening.
Hi. When you, I think I put a comment in there actually on one of the papers. When I was doing my surveys with a high vis on, holding a round the corners, see the brake lights.
Oh yeah.
Really bad effective, so you may not need these SOBs, just let me walk around the village or
Sign this jacket.
Carry out what they've done in Mark.
So I was asked to go on a course. I didn't really know much about the whole setup, but I went on the course and passed, so I am qualified. I'm a chartered engineer anyway, but I'm qualified to do the work for the SIDs. And then I came back and Steve not here tonight, is he? Steve,
No.
Steve sent me quite a lot of information, which I just tried to summarise for my own purposes. And I sent this. Did you all get the report? I sent out?
Very good.
So, thank you. So I was just really to see where we are on this, and so I won't bore you if you've read all of the report. And then I did an addendum because I think it was Suzanne said to me there was Theale and Blackford, so I wasn't aware of that first time round.
You'd better be included.
So I added this addendum and went out and looked at the areas there, but I would say right up front that I'm sure you people around the table will have more knowledge of where the speeding is than I do. So I suppose the first suggestion would be that if you're going to go ahead with this, then we should perhaps work together. I mean, I'm very happy to give my time up for free, obviously, and go around the village and outside and assist with this, but it might be necessary to have somebody in that area with me and we can just agree the positions. So that's very important to agree the positions if you want to go for fixed. So if you go for the fixed, it is a lot easier to go for the fixed because then we basically have them with a solar panel. They're not then movable, obviously, and then we go from that. Once they're fixed, we obviously need to get the positions correct, but then we can move into the analysis. Now, I didn't send you I sent you a little project which you might have read, which somebody else has done, which I think is quite good. But actually, I do have all the data collection stuff, so it's quite an involved process, which I'm pretty familiar with. It's not too difficult. So it means one thing putting them up, but you would want to see the analysis of are they working, because we can switch them off and see what happens, then we can switch them on and we can download the data, and it's really the analysis of all the data. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is to get cars, vehicles to slow down. So there is quite a lot. If anybody wants to see how to do it, that's fine. The other option is from fixed is obviously to have portable, and that will require batteries. So we will charge one at home, and then I will go out and put that battery in. It might last several weeks, depending just how much vehicle traffic. And then you've got the facility to move them around. So you could buy one and have as many brackets as you want. So that one would be, the costings are all in there. That one, the brackets are £50, etc. Then if you decide where you want them and then you want to do the conversion, there is a cost, and I've put all that in there, I hope it's clear. There's about £750 to convert it into you have to do the conversion. So all of that, and I think a comparison. So it's more expensive to go for a portable one and then convert later than go straight in. If you go portable, there's obviously more work involved and probably would require somebody else to be trained up, because there'd be quite a lot of work there. So the training is not difficult. It's it's a whole day though, and they do test you, they do examine you. They don't give you the answers, so but it's not complicated. So I'm sure all of you could do that.
Judy wanted to do it, didn't she?
Yeah.
Excuse me, Chair, would you be able to show somebody how to do it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I could go through with somebody exactly
That's what I think.
what it is and what the tests are and everything else. This would be
I just think the same with other training things.
Yeah.
Well, we'd have to have.
no, sorry.
We'd have to have.
I can give them a.
Yeah.
I can help them,
certificate.
No, it's fine.
but they have to actually attend to
Yeah.
Yeah.
get the certificate. So yeah, it's a 5-year certificate. If you decide to go for the one, then obviously we need to move it around. Now the places I picked or chose there were 3 in Wedmore. I have to say the one that I wasn't quite so confident about was in Pilcon Street, because I didn't feel that was quite so essential as the other 2. Okay, I just felt that was, and I did monitor traffic. I stood there a long time with my jacket on, and just watching the traffic. I also did it without the yellow jacket, so I could see the difference. And I didn't think Pilcon Street, particularly as you come in, you've got all the school and the 20 and everything, and I didn't see cars massively speeding up along that road, but I might be wrong. And then the Thiel and Blackford, again, I did the where I thought they should go, but I think we need somebody to come out with me.
Yeah.
You certainly already highlighted, didn't you? With
The one, I was interested in one of the ones you identified was right alongside the play area, so it's just inside stuff.
Yeah.
So that's probably not a good place for it, but you did one from the opposite end,
Yeah.
which I wouldn't have thought of, and it might be useful.
So I think that's the thing about it is what I think you have to decide really is do you want them to be fixed? Do you want to go with fixed ones to start with, or do you want to start portable ones? I can work out the analysis for you to come back, but obviously the position of them is very important to go with. So,
How much are they?
well, now of course the other thing is the ones that we've gone with here are the ones recommended by Harvey's. Yeah, so I don't think you should probably go with anything different, to be honest, if you want to get them through. So, did I do some costing? So you're looking at portable one's about £2,600. Then you need a bracket, and you also need a data collection unit. If you don't have a data collection unit, you don't have an analysis. So on the fixed ones, 2 of them, they're about 3.5 the fixed ones.
Solar. That's solar.
That's solar. Yeah, if you went for if you had 2 solar ones, you can see the cost there. Well, again, you'd have to upgrade one if you were upgrading one. I've done analysis here by taking 1 to start with. One portable with all the necessary bits and pieces, including a contingency of £100, which is like padlock.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to steal it. So all of that would be about £3,200. If you then wanted to upgrade and say, okay, we now know where we want that one, so we're going to convert that one portable to a fixed and add another fix. Then, or 2 more fixed, sorry, then you had 3. That was my original proposal, so you got 3. You're talking about an upgrade of 8,400, so you can see you're into the for those three would come to
Be 11.
Yeah, 11,000. If you just decided to go with 3 fixed straight away, it's slightly cheaper. It's 11,600. I think this one comes to more. If you add it up, it's about 11,800 or something. It's a couple £100 more cheaper to go straight with the 3 fixed. So it's really
Personally, I'd like to go with the portable first, with the analysis, and then we can pinpoint where we then can put fixed.
yeah, that's fine.
Second that, I think it's a really good idea.
What's everyone's thoughts? I think I think we could go on and put fixed in,
Yeah.
and then we've lost the opportunity to put other areas that might be highlighted whilst people are slowed down because of the fixed units. People might be speeding elsewhere, so we might have lost the advantage of having a portable unit.
Well, the advantage of the portable unit is that you can try it in different places. Okay, so
And then do the analysis with the portable, and then we've got more of an idea then of when we can then put a fixed
Well,
or
that's what the cost there was, Jim, sorry.
3.5
So-
portable, wouldn't it?
yeah, you've got 3. This doesn't include the VAT. I don't know if you get VAT back.
we got it back.
Right, so if you went for one portable, and I'm suggesting just the slow down legend with the actual speed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, no, it's not the actual speed, the 30. So
Yeah.
flash 30
Yeah.
and have slow down
That's it.
Yeah.
on it. So that's what you see. If you actually do it with the speed of the car, you get people trying to see how high they can
Yeah, they
get.
do,
So-
yeah.
So that would come to 3,270. Now that's assuming there's one other person to be trained. But you don't necessarily need that. I could probably do it on my own to start with.
Let's go with that, and then we can.
So you can take 195 off that, so you're down to about just over 3,000.
That includes the analytical equipment, so you can.
Yep.
That, yeah.
That includes everything, and I've got a laptop I can use. It's not a problem with that, so I can download it to a laptop and take it home and then give you the reports.
Yeah, so that's the whole.
And then we can see how it's all working, and that would give us time probably to go out to Thiel and Blackford and choose the sites. And then actually it's just a question of brackets then, because the brackets are £50. Now there are 1 or 2 odd brackets spread around. I think I showed you a picture.
Yeah.
But the one in Blackford, the post is like that, so I'm not sure what vehicles they're actually scanning. Aircraft, I think. But
Helicopters.
Seems reasonable. Probably fleet coming in.
but I think so that would be a good starting point to do that, and then we'd test it all out and get our feet on it. But I think in parallel with that is to try and agree well, we need to know the sites we're going to take it to.
Let's get the portable, and then we can agree further.
Well,
Well, I'll propose further.
we've had a second.
But we've also looked in already regarding funding, and we can use SIL money for funding the speed indicators, so it won't actually come out of our budget.
We've
So,
already had £3,200 from SIL this
so
year,
that'll
so we can use
so
that.
developer money basically. So we can use that.
Okay.
So
So
we're happy with that.
Yes.
yeah. So I'll just wait, and I'm happy to do the work.
If you liaise with Rod, we can get it purchased and.
No problem. Okay.
Excellent, guys. Thank you very much for your work.
Thank you.
Take this away from him, because really, we appreciate that.
Yeah.
We'll talk.
Yeah. So Neil will give us a call on it.
Yes. Thank you very much for your work. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Okay. Was there anything else anyone wants to add?
No,
Okay.
no.
Just Bob's been here a long time, do you want to bring this forward,
Yeah.
Chairman?
No,
Sure.
It was a long day, wasn't it?
Give me a
come and
prod.
sit here. He's wasting good drinking time.
So we'll just swap around a couple of the agenda items. Item 11 for item 14, 14 back to 11. Okay, Bob, over to you.
Right, well thanks for the invite.
I did try and get you on a bit earlier, sorry. Did try and get you on a bit earlier, but sorry.
That's all right. It's interesting to hear some of the things that have been reported this evening. I'm a bit better informed. Just a brief update on slow but steady progress on the neighbourhood plan. You should probably know, we submitted it to Sedgemoor in November. They quickly appointed an inspector who undertook her examination in January and February. She decided that she didn't need a public session, she could do it simply by exchange of letters and questions and such like, which is good. We got a report just at the end of February, and the thing you have to understand about an inspector's report or an examiner's report is that her recommendations, they're not recommendations, you either accept them or you bin the plan. Yeah, it's a one-way street, really. So even though I have to say we're disappointed by some of her recommendations, we don't really want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, some of the highlights are, well, one good one which has sort of flowed down from the Sedgemoor local plan, which was adopted on the 20th of February, is that Wedmore is, whereas previously affordable housing only clicked in for sites of 11 units, 11 houses or more, they recognise that Wedmore is a rural settlement and that the new threshold will be 6. So if anybody comes in with 6 houses or more, they've got to provide their share of affordable housing, although if it's between 6 and 11, it's likely to be a sum of money rather than a physical house. But that will swell the amount of affordable housing that the parish will get. I think the one that probably upset us most of all was that she diluted the sort of green energy proposals that we were proposing for the housing. I'm not entirely surprised because the government's policy, whatever the government says about trying to be green and climate change, as far as housing is concerned, they're simply concerned about delivering numbers. And the National Planning Policy Framework, which is the guideline, says that people like us, or Sedgemoor, can't add extra energy saving insulation standards in our plan. I think it'll change in the next 2 or 3 years, but we've just got caught by this, which hasn't pleased the Green Group, but there we are. She endorsed our various transport proposals, and just thinking of what Dennis was saying about locations for speed cameras and Pilcourt Street. I mean, one of our recommendations is to try and get a footpath all the way along the northern side of Pilcourt Street with some narrowing and possibly further traffic calming, which probably would entirely rule out the need for any further signs along there. To reflect the West Holm Farm Planning Commission, we were saying 11, 16 is permitted, so she said, well, let's say it's somewhere between 11 and 16. I mean, it's a done deal, so that's not really anything. We had a late consultation on the local lettings policy, which had a lot of support in the village for affordable housing. And the examiner said she was in favour of it, but she didn't think it was necessary to make the plan sound, so she'd leave it to Sedgemoor to decide whether we could include it or not. Sedgemoor took legal advice, and their lawyer said, you can't do it under the regulations, so we've been told that we can't have this local lettings policy, or if we did, we'd have to incorporate it in a review of the plan, so that's also a bit of a disappointment. The final, obviously one of the big incentives of getting to the end of this process is that rather than getting 15% of community infrastructure levy, you'll get 25%, which means its current figure, a developer pays £80 per square metre for a house. So very simply, for every square metre, once this is adopted, for every square metre of house, you'll get £20 to spend on local community projects. So for an average house, say 800 square metres, it's about £1,600 per house. So it's worth having.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
They're going to be very affordable at 800 square metres, aren't they? They're going to be a very affordable house at 800 square metres, aren't they?
Well, that's an average spec build 3-bedroom house. Yeah, I mean there's probably, if you're going for 1-bedroom flats, it could well be 525 square metres or something like that. But so we're definitely going to referendum on election day, 2nd of May, and assuming that the good folk of Wedmore, more than 50% vote yes, we have got to the end of this long and tortuous process.
For yourself, very torturous.
But there we are. That's all. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Nick?
No, mate, I'm grateful for everything you've done. For you and your team have done.
I think of the community we are actually. It's I don't think people appreciate how much work you've put into it. So
I think a lot of people didn't appreciate when we started quite what was involved. But, I mean, it's typical planning. It's sort of bureaucratic, and you have to sort of consult.
But we've never gone through it without your expertise.
no, not at all. No.
It's
It's been fun.
But it's been quite fun being a gamekeeper rather than a coach.
Just turn the hat round.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, nothing else.
Thank you
I'll
so
leave you
much.
to enjoy the rest of your
Thank
meeting.
you.
Bye. See you on Friday.
Oh yes, Friday.
Friday.
Okay. My item.
11 first.
Oh, we go back to that. Okay. Well, I've already been swapped over. Consider costings for tree cutting and pruning at Blackford Play area.
Yeah, we've had several complaints. I know you brought this up quite a while ago.
Yes.
The trees along the road at Blackford, where the bus stop is there, they really are encroaching on the highway and in the play area. And I've had 2 quotations through. One from Stuart Banning to cut them right back, the pruning, and another one from John Weiwei. There's £1,000 difference in favour of John Weiwei. I think Stuart Banning wanted to do it, but he had so many men employed, and the chairman's been through these quotes with me. He's going to be employing so many men. There's got to be traffic signs put up and traffic lights or traffic management. It'll be a Saturday morning job, but it looks like it's going to cost about £1,300 with one contractor and
Over 2,000.
over 2,000 on the other one. So if you're happy, I would
Same
ask,
specification, same work. It's
Yeah.
just the cost difference.
just the cost of it. So if you're happy, I would ask John Weiwei to go ahead
Yeah.
and do it as soon as possible, because it's getting in the truck.
Yes,
The
it
lines,
is.
overhead lines are being.
I propose we go ahead.
Thanks very much.
second
And your
it.
second, thank you very much. Is everybody happy with it?
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously they're going to have to go inside
The player as well.
the area.
Yeah.
Exactly. The whole road's going to be, cleared down.
No, I mean, but if you need keys, we are the key holder.
Well, our grass cutter's got a key to the gate to get in, because they will need a chipping machine and everything else.
Yeah, sure. No, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Item 12. Consider costings for heating upgrade at the council rooms. You remember from our January meeting, sorts of costs. I got a quote in and we were waiting on another one, so we deferred it from last month. The second quote has come back and they were
About £400
more than the quote that I got.
So it's about £2,500.
£2,500 for the heating and water heater for the kitchen.
This is replacing the storage heaters right throughout the building
What for?
to make the place warmer.
No. What are you replacing them with?
Oh,
Electric heaters.
electric heaters. And you can actually, you've got a good enough phone, you can actually switch them on from home. That's what I'm
So
told.
everyone can.
You want to get a good enough
So my Tesco pension goes.
Now you need a smartphone.
There is a little bit of a catch with that.
Oh, yes.
And the fact is, I remember me mentioning at the last meeting, there's no asbestos report for the building. Storage heaters, there's a potential that storage heaters have got asbestos in them, so we have to arrange for an asbestos inspection and testing So it's pretty routine. Before that happens, we'll have the test done, which will happen in the next couple of weeks, and then we can go on and get the heating and everything else sorted. Okay.
Is everybody happy?
As a public building, we've got a duty of care to have one anyway, so.
Are you happy with the
Yes.
cheaper quote for the two, really?
Yeah, yes.
Nice.
Would you recommend have a second? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right. Item 13.
Which is... Oh yes, this had been deferred for a couple of months ago. You remember that we had a call from the Health Community Fund at the Health Centre asking if we would pay the maintenance charge for the new defibrillator which has been placed outside the paper shop with all stores. And we were a bit concerned that we're going to get landed with sort of ongoing maintenance issues rather than a one-off fee, £130 a year. You know, if there's something that needs replacing, whether we're going to get landed with that. And what about all the other ones around the parish?
Yeah, sure.
There's now 3 or 4. But at the moment we've just been asked to pay for the maintenance contract that run outside the village stores, which I think is £165 a year. I did speak to the company. It's called, I think it's called Blood Network or something. It's a charity anyway who actually put them up there, and the girl told me, assured me that it's just a one-off payment every year, £165. And I said, well, I'll put it to the council this evening. There's no other costs. I mean, if we get another application from elsewhere in the parish, we'll have to consider it. But this on the table tonight is just for this one item.
You only qualify for SIL, surely.
Yes, probably would do.
SIL.
Yeah,
SIL payments.
It's great. And this SIL payments is.
Yes.
Do I have a proposal?
It's only
Yes,
£165.
I propose
Thank you,
that we pay for it.
And second,
Once a
Suzanne.
year.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll tell Mrs. Wedmore tomorrow that we'll do this.
Okay. All right, Jess?
We've got a little sugar going there.
Never know when we might need it.
Well, can I just make that point?
Well, we will do.
Sorry?
If we do need it, and we use it, it needs to be replaced. So I think the 165 might go through the roof if they've got to replace the unit. But that's a bridge to be crossed as and when we get
It is. We're always asking them is the maintenance contract for it. Which is being, the credit is being paid by the
I thought some units you could just
Yeah.
reuse them.
Really?
Can you just reuse
Yes.
them? Can
Yes, you just use it.
you? Some of them
Can
can.
we use them? Some of
Take
them.
advice.
Well, you know,
Let's go and try it out.
it's a few years ago. Right.
Yeah.
Let's just hope it doesn't get used. Anyway, so.
Good idea. Any more chilies?
Well, no, that's right. Okay. Well, we've done dealt with Bob. So item 15. Any issues and questions raised by councillors?
Well,
I have an issue. As you go down Dungeon, I believe it's the ex-Chief Constable of Somerset, Officer Paddock up there. Yeah, Pilkington. Yesterday I was going down there to see somebody, and there was a lady on a horse going down there, and all the briars were well over the road. She had to be halfway out in the road. So I was going to run up the highway myself, and I thought, well, if I bring it up tomorrow, you know I've brought it up. It's briars that, I mean, I had to cut my hedge down, but it's no sour grapes, and he should cut that back. It's never been trimmed back for years. I mean, she could have lost her eye. No ifs or buts.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, sorry to interrupt there, if there's, because I got an issue that I've had brought to my notice, is the pinch point opposite the entrance to Paradise Barton. There's a wall that runs round, and there's two shrubs, I suppose, or decorative trees that are sort of, I should imagine at one time were sort of nearly like climbers, and they've fallen over. And I know that things on, but it's not an easy place to go. I don't know whether it should be reported through and get some sort of official.
Can you look into that one?
Yeah, I think it's a question.
If there's a highway issue, then
that's what I mean.
If there's a health and safety highway issue, then
is that for Roger's cars?
Yes,
first
just the first left-hand band from right. There's two shrubs, things have really gone right out in the road, and that is narrow there.
Is that, as you go round coming from Wedmore, you go round the X-bend,
Yeah.
right? Rogers is down here. Is it these shrubs here, this property?
You're coming up through Blackford.
Yeah,
The
from Wedmore.
church is the, from
Oh, right, okay.
You're not on
No, you're on about next to where Lanes used to live. You're
Yeah.
just past Tim's on the corner.
Oh,
She's on
right.
about.
Oh, right.
No, that's not the ones. It's further on down, past Rogers
I'll put them
Castle.
both
Pass
in
Where
towards
the narrow
the
is.
church?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I know what you mean.
We'll get involved, Mr. Pilkins.
Mike, you got anything?
Yeah.
No, I haven't. Suzanne, have you got anything?
No.
Okay, Sue, anything else? Laura?
No,
Nick?
I think
Colin?
I have one, Chairman, sorry, it came in today, the sports pavilion are applying for a justice's licence to sell alcohol up there. We've been asked if we want to make any comments, and I think it's just routine really. Most sports pavilions have a justice's licence, but I said we'll discuss our next council meeting, but they won't have it. They said it's got to be in by the 16th of April. It's not on the agenda, but if anybody's got any serious views, let me know, otherwise I'll
Probably
just
only
say.
the hours, I would.
Well, I think it is.
Yeah, as
Well,
long
I
as
think
they've got a
that's-
good supply of
Let me
types of
regulate
gin,
those,
and they'll be alright.
Yeah,
More funding.
and those were second. So I'll probably say we've probably got no objection in principle anyway, then.
Just one other, Mr. Chairman. I had a Chris McKinley, who was the caretaker at the school, came to see me, and he said that he's very concerned about. There's a little lane if you go up past what is called the Loop.
Yeah.
There's a lane that runs through there, and he's just very concerned about the amount of plastic bags full of dog poo that are thrown in the hedge, and of course it's right next to the children's,
There.
well, it's a playing field, so it's not a play area.
Yeah.
But he just asked me if I would sort of at least put it to somebody if there's any.
What about more news?
Oh, you want more news?
I'll put it on Web One News.
On Web News, if not, we'll look at some signage there.
It's everywhere around the village though.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Charlotte, and they had a clean-up day the other day. Do you remember
Yeah.
And Charlotte and the boys went out. And she said the worst thing were these constant bags of poo stuck in the trees.
Yeah.
If you're going to take a bag out
What's wrong?
and go through putting the poo in it, they keep putting it in the
It was
bin.
there was that MP that was trying to get the stick and flick
She said it was
campaign, wasn't she?
everywhere.
Yeah.
It's not good on animals' fields, but
It's better to...
it's better in the
Yeah.
hedge than it is hanging.
We put a bid up, it's been £400 plus the emptying charge, it's quite a lot of money, you know.
That's
a bit of publicity, I think.
£400, is it?
Yeah.
Chris was saying, well,
Yeah.
Plus
why can't they
the
go
ongoing empty
bin on
charge.
the end?
Yeah, plus the ongoing
But I
empty
wasn't
charge.
able to quote.
People have done half the job.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
A bit of publicity about it, MP.
Well,
We put one by the church, you know.
down by the, because Church Lane is, dog walking
That's a good
paradise.
If
idea.
anyone wants to do some posters, we can put some posters up as well.
Or I can get the dog warden from Central to put some posters up on that around there.
Yeah.
That might be a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
Correspondence?
No, I was.
Dog's perfect.
Item 17, committee report, cemetery, Dennis.
Oh, yes, we did have a meeting, yes.
Suddenly.
We had a meeting, we looked at the maintenance schedule, which all seemed to be going well. We just sort of needed to perhaps do a bit more work on the garden of remembrance, a bit more weeding, and a few of the edges of the paths needed a bit more work on. But we felt that Will was doing pretty well actually, wasn't he?
He
Seems to be
blow
going
off
okay.
just blow that off the
Yeah.
path.
Yeah.
But
It would be helpful.
The trouble is when the wind blows, just blows it back on.
we're still trying to think about a demarcation between the grave area and the car park on the bottom there. Perhaps flat things, no, we would
Well,
have
the
put flat,
I
yeah.
came up, maybe we could
Yeah.
put, because there's a drain and there's big stones over the drain, so we can't put anything in there. So we wondered about marking it out, sort of cutting a clean edge that's trimmed, and then putting finer gravel so
Pebbles
that
or
it
slate.
pebbles or slate, something decorative, so that it demarks it and people can stand on
I've got
that.
a tame landscape garden, you can have a look at it this week.
Oh, right.
Just give us-
Brilliant.
Is this on top of a land drain though?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so if you put like smaller gravel on top of the land drain, it defeats the object, because it then fills the land drain. So everything then washes down, your fines wash down and then block your drain.
Drain.
So all the work you've done
Well, what
basically gets...
about big
It's a
ones
slate
like that
or something
slate, do you know that?
Yeah, I still think it'll but that's what's there, isn't it? That's what they're on.
Yeah, then.
I mean, yeah, like you say, if
Yeah.
you make some
Gravel
chunky,
there now.
yeah, chunky
No,
like
it's really
shingle,
chunky.
yeah, that's what you want. It's the big. Otherwise, you're just it's gonna fill up again, and you sort of feed the whole object.
There's a pipe there with holes in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you
that's
need
right.
to have.
Right through it, it's proper land drain.
Yeah.
Or maybe we
Okay.
could put some sort of like a little slabs or something or other the other side of that drain. Just something to demarcation, because it's just
It just looks really
yeah,
strong.
wants something.
Yeah.
But perhaps leave the drain as it is and put something on the other
Yeah.
side of the drain.
Mm.
Slabs or something. But anyway, so we looked at that. Couple of the benches needed to be looked at.
Martha Biscar is taking
Yeah,
us away and doing
sorted,
this.
excellent. And we did look at the far corner where we took a shed down many years, well, a few years ago. And I sort of thought, well, that plaster looks a bit dangerous, and so Jess touched it
And
and
it
it
started
fell off.
falling down.
So we perhaps need to look at something around there, because there is that zinc sheeting just sort of sticking out.
Yeah.
Bit dangerous.
So
That
a bit dangerous,
corner,
just
that corner
needs-
wants completely clearing out.
I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, but we perhaps just needs to, for health and safety, if we just do something with
There's
that,
no plaster.
zinc sheeting and the plaster to start off with.
Right, okay.
Completely.
That's probably about it really for the cemetery, but it all seems to be really nice out there.
Yeah.
Okay, facilities, allotments and footpaths.
Nothing on allotments, Chairman, just one issue on footpaths. The kissing gate at opposite Pillam Farm is, well, more or less fell over really.
Sorry, where is that?
In the field,
Oh, okay.
Mrs. Champion.
Oh, yes, sorry,
Right
yeah.
opposite is the gate.
Yeah.
Well, the wind or the rain have distorted the thing and it's
John,
sort
are you looking at?
I looked at Sedgmore first, we looked at the county first, didn't we really? We just
Yeah.
paid,
Is
just
it
paid for one
dangerous? Is it
stop.
dangerous?
No, it isn't dangerous, but when the cattle go in the field, they'll just walk straight through the gate like, because it's not,
So it
it
is
just
dangerous.
swings now in.
So it
and
is
out.
dangerous, isn't it? Really?
We ought to report the county first. We just paid for one at Blackford to be done, which we shouldn't have done really,
Well,
but
no, but
otherwise
we've been
it wouldn't
waiting
get
for
done,
3
would it?
years for it to
Where
be
Hill
done.
Lane is,
Yeah,
just going towards Wells, another 100
Yeah, right opposite there.
right, Pilmore,
okay,
Hill Ham Farm is down the track,
yeah.
and it's right
Opposite.
If you could try yours first, and then if not,
I
we'll
think there is.
Well, it's
Yeah.
usually,
Yeah.
we'll get John back
So
involved.
Doesn't own it.
was it a landowner?
No,
It's usually-
no, no,
yeah.
outside
There's
the road.
Miller's.
Yeah, it's Miller's.
Miller's.
Yes, it's been reported,
Is it?
yeah. It has been reported,
I don't
I'm
know.
pretty sure it has been.
Right.
And it's usually down to the landowner to fix it,
Mm.
so.
Because the county will provide the materials, won't they?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah,
There was
Sometimes.
only an allowance, wasn't there? The material.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure, I talked to
Can
Chrissy
you check
about
that
that.
before I get
What's it called again?
Pelham Farm?
Oh,
Opposite, but
Oh, is it?
the notes are.
No,
notes
it's
are
never
land.
on it.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm pretty sure.
It's not your place, Nick, is it?
They don't
A smart
get
place
along.
and deal with
No, no,
those.
they don't.
Yeah, it must be ours, yeah, you're right, yeah. Been there recently.
Alright, anything else, Mike? We just mentioned about the area ground off the car park that we were originally proposing for a green space or whatever. We'll look about getting it all cleared or just mowed,
The field.
Oh, down
Yeah.
behind Wellington
just
Post.
cleared
Yeah.
over
Yeah.
before it starts growing back up. So
So-
yeah, I've already spoken to Mike about
Oh,
it.
okay.
Spoke- Yeah, so that's in hand. Alright. Finance and general purposes,
No.
housing, next week,
Yeah.
are we saying?
Sorry?
Cross Farm, were we saying, starting next week?
26th of March, somebody keeps telling me.
I thought it was 21st.
People keep asking me, I keep saying 26th
26th,
of March.
but
I
don't
I keep saying October.
I just emailed Duncan Harvey
Isn't that
last week
Brexit?
and say,
Yeah.
news, and I was
Dot
on
29.
that, so.
26th the last information we have.
Well, the trees were
That's
cut
Tuesday.
down.
Yeah.
Oh, ages
Oh.
and going back to rise.
Yeah,
They
okay.
probably got it down.
Yesterday.
But it's imminent.
Imminent, that's the word.
It's coming.
Highways, car park and brook.
Now, this is where I want to bring up the discussion that I had with a lady, and you know, we discussed the fences at the car park, and we've had the trees cut down, but the original fence, some of it's in a bit of a bad way. We decided that it would be an idea to replace that fence and put it up against the wire fence, and Neil was suggesting that he did it in coordination with the people with Blue Cedar, or Cedar Blue, or
Yeah.
whatever they call themselves now, do it, Holdenhurst.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Well, the lady who lives in the car park is very, very distressed because we've cut, obviously, since it's all been cut down, and she's the one where it has no wooden fence against the chain link, so she just got the chain link fence. And the car park, there's only these two houses that are affected by the car park. There's just two houses really that it affects. And she's got kids in with big box music, shouting and screaming, they've got the headlights on full, and they're just straight into her sitting room. And I mean, she tore strips off rods.
Oh, about 20 minutes of pure joy this
And
morning.
she tore some strips off me as well. I rang her afterwards. I do have some sympathy for her and for the other lady, because they are the only two houses that are quite affected by the car park, because they back onto it. And we made the decision that we would not go and put the fence any higher.
Right.
And I think we made the wrong decision.
Well, it ain't happening. We're not doing it.
Sanctuary should be doing it.
Yeah, they've got to go through to their. They've got a chain link fence. We put a fence up.
Is that their
No, the chain link fence was put up when the houses were built. That's part of the boundary for the bungalows.
But then we put another fence up.
Yeah.
And we put it, on one house, we put the fence up against the chain link fence.
It's where how the boundary works, wouldn't
And,
it? It's
then on
it's
the other
angle,
house,
isn't
we
it?
left
It's like a wedge, isn't it?
we left a no man's land, and that's where those trees grew up. But that fence is falling down. So if we were to put that fence back up, because it is our fence, then we put it up next to her chain link fence. What's another 2 foot going to cost us on two houses?
I don't see why we should. I really don't. We'll get.
I think for somebody's peace of mind.
Contact the police.
For everybody in the village.
We'll contact the
It's
police.
to-
Get the police to do a drive-by.
Well, they have contacted the police, but we were promised some time ago by the police that they would continuously patrol that car park, and they don't.
Mike.
The fence was originally put up there when it was barren land for a screening, for just our courtesy really, to the hedge and that growed up. And then they asked for it to be cut down because they didn't have no daylight and darkness in the windows. Now we've cut the hedge down and they want a new fence, so no, I personally don't think it's going to happen soon.
We did have a fence there originally.
Yeah, but that was only put there temporary to the hedge.
While the hedge was growing up.
Temporary, it's been there since the car park was built.
Yeah.
We give time for the hedge to
I
establish,
disagree.
basically.
That's right.
But now there's no hedge.
I disagree.
They asked for those to be cut down.
I suggest this morning she rang Sanctuary and said, oh, they won't do anything, they won't
No,
spend
they
any
won't.
money.
No, I
You
don't
know,
think
well,
they
they put the fence panels on their side. That's what I suggested to her.
How much do these fence panels cost?
Well, that's not the
It's not the principle, if you do it from
We're
one,
in
it's
the
the
principle.
It's not at all, is it? It's, you know,
It was only put there as
this
a...
is,
We cut the hedges down because that's what they wanted. We've taken the old damaged fence panels away because
Yeah,
they were like
Sanctuary's
woodman.
property.
And now they want everything put back again because the headlights of the cars are shining in.
within 3 or 4 months, that hedge will be growing back up anyway. It'll fill out.
Yeah, I'm hoping.
Who's
Whose is the bit of land? You know, the wedge. Whose is that land?
It's nice.
Ours has for it.
Oh,
So we could put a fence up against their bit of...
Very dangerous.
Yeah. But why should we then?
because there was a fence there before.
Yeah, but it was as a temporary measure
Till the hedge
till the hedge grew.
Now,
I'm only going on, obviously, you know.
Yeah. Well,
Jesse, you
Yes, that's what it was, we only put it there, so the hedge, once the hedge grew, it wasn't to be there. And as far as I'm concerned, it's Sanctuary's job to make that private, not ours. That's the thing that I'm thinking of. I mean, some people want everything. We took down the hedge to make them happy, and now that isn't right.
it's not on the agendas, we can't make a decision.
No,
tonight.
I'm just reporting on.
No, that's
you can see
fine. No,
the
that's
way things
good.
are-
I'm just showing no, I'm highly the views, really.
Have we put on the agenda for next month if we want to?
Yeah, well, I think.
No, we'll come. No, I've got a bill on the agenda next month. That's fine.
Why can't we just...
We
Well,
can't.
can.
so
We
can't.
on the agenda.
It's not on the
Right,
agenda.
probably right to the sanctuary, isn't that just natural?
That's a different...
Just right to the sanctuary on her behalf. I mean, we don't have to have it on the agenda.
No, they do that.
Why don't we just write to the sanctuary?
Well, if we put it on the agenda
Can she
for
not write
next
sanctuary?
time,
Yeah.
Sorry?
we can make those
What?
Can
decisions.
she not write sanctuary herself?
Well, she says
She
well,
won't-
she doesn't
she won't have as
she
much
doesn't have
sway
as
as
much
we
sway
do.
as we do. I think if we just wrote and said...
Technically she should do.
She's got more than we have, it's a tenant.
She could take it
Her,
out to
her privacy is being affected.
Protected, and she can go to Sanctuary.
We've already had this conversation regarding Sanctuary, and there was a route to go down with regard to how they dealt with their tenants down at Withington.
There's so many
there's
complaints about
there's another avenue to go down
the
with that.
support from Sanctuary by the tenants down there. You know, they're not just,
They're
not
not
just these
looking
two
after
houses,
them.
there's got a lot of
Sorry?
houses in there.
Yeah.
So sanctuary, you know,
I wouldn't say that. Sanctuary could be doing a bit more perhaps.
They
So
need
is
to.
it-
They won't
is it
spend
up
any
to
money.
us to
Yeah.
chip it
No,
off?
no.
We have. Were you here when Duncan Harvey spoke?
Yes, I think so.
Well, Duncan raised it that we then, if there is an issue, we get, as a parish council, we get complaints from the residents or the tenants of Sanctuary down at Withington, then we should forward on to Sedgemoor, and then they'll raise it directly with Sanctuary.
Well then, that must be the route to go.
With a
then.
view of, you know, them not abiding by their own terms of agreement, then there's something that Sedgemoor can then do about it. But if we don't,
Because they're not
obviously, we
one
don't.
of Sedgemoor's preferred partners, are they? So
Well, there's no
Well, they're not local. They're not a local
housing
company
They're
anymore.
not in
They're,
Somerset.
they're not local. So.
This is the only one, I think,
Yeah.
in Somerset.
Yeah.
They have.
I
They
see
should.
them in Wales quite a bit, their vans, their vehicles.
Yeah, that's
Into Mendip, isn't it?
Oh,
So,
right,
Sedgemoor.
yeah.
Sorry, Sedgemoor, yeah.
Yeah.
So that'll be an avenue to.
yeah.
Right.
I'll put it on the agenda if you want to for next month.
I just think we need to
Just
sort
right.
it.
Just right, it's Sedgemoor.
Yeah.
Can we
Well, in the
agree
meantime,
to do that?
by the time
Do that.
we're ready to put the agenda together for next month's meeting, we can write to Sedgemoor or Sanctuary,
Sanctuary.
and then by then we might be able to resolve
Right
or
to
get a
says
response.
we're copying in Sanctuary.
Sanctuary.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Planning.
A meeting on the 3rd of April, Chairman. And there's some new regulations coming in, and Pete Brown is going to come along and talk us through it, so it'll be quite interesting.
I think you might be privy to that, Nick, mightn't you?
Right, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. It's nothing too scary. So. All right. Right. Reps on committees. Isle of Wedmore News. Glenys.
No, nothing to report on that, it's fine.
Areas. Do you see the reports?
Yeah, I saw them. I can't say I read them. Yeah, we were talking, or we have spoken in the past about amalgamating
Yes.
the three. I think Theo would jump at that opportunity. Is that likely
Yeah, I think we were going to put it on next month's agenda actually. We were a bit log jam this month, so it's going to need a bit of consideration. So. With regards to Wedmore, I've sent off the inspector. We've had the play areas inspected. So I've sent Wedmore's off to the manufacturer of the kit that was installed over the last few years, and there was some stuff that I was involved with the old play area that's still under warranty. So they're going to come out and have a look and then carry out any works that are under warranty. So we might be able to save some money on that respect. So I'm dealing with that. So that'll happen over the next sort of 6 weeks. So which is good. I think that's it for the play areas. Salk,
No, nothing was reported on that.
play and fields management.
All going well. Pete,
Polly, well, you said you've been up there. Have you been up there again since the open day, or?
No.
Well, I'm up there every day,
Right.
pretty much on the school run, so it's getting there.
Pete Branson was there this morning, and everything's going along well. So
And I spoke to Pete this morning, so within the next fortnight they'll know what their funding shortage will be. So I did
They're
ask him.
crowdfunding as well, aren't they?
Yeah, they are indeed. Yeah. We bought a panel.
Crowdfunding
Yeah, we bought a panel. So.
under Richard
Bamwell.
Richard Bamwell. So if you go on to crowdfunding and put in Richard Bamwell's name, the 3 ones will come up.
So they've raised the money that they needed for the car park. So,
bicycle racks.
And it's
so there's also bicycle racks that they've
Bicycle
raised money
racks,
for, and we're looking for 8,500 to finish the funding for the panels, and they were £1,000 in on that. So,
Very well.
but the rest, I think there was still some funding to go for the refurb, well, not refurb, but fitting out of the upstairs. So Pete will update us accordingly in the next couple of weeks. So that's good, all good news.
Have they got over the what was the theft?
Yeah.
What was taken?
Sorted that.
Yeah, I think that was insurance.
Just covered, yeah. Okay. Village halls.
Yes, Wedmore Village Hall, we're going to do a reading on the kitchen.
Sorry, say again.
Going to update the kitchen.
Okay.
We're doing it with the advice of the Tuesday Club. We're also going to do the entrance hall. We're putting in a false ceiling and decorating there. We're also putting some new notice boards up. So we're spending money.
I noticed you put a table with a vase or something in the entrance
It's-
hall.
we've
Makes
got
such a
that.
difference.
We've got that.
Yes, I
now
know, I
already.
noticed it.
Yeah.
It looks really nice.
No beer festival this year.
We haven't heard about that.
Is that right or not?
No, we haven't heard.
I've heard a rumour
Huh?
that it's not that the beer festival's going to go up.
We're not sure.
So it's only a rumour, I think.
Yeah, unfortunate. Anyway. Okay.
Sorry? Tom.
Item 18, matter of report and items for the next meeting. There's nothing currently from me.
No, that'd be Chairman.
Any members next month?
I'll turn the camera off now.
No.
Thank you very much and good night.